Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of The Office Hour. I'm Stuart, your Vice President Education, and I'm here with a special episode today where I'm interviewing two of our faculty reps. Would you like to introduce yourselves, gentlemen?
Yes, hi, I'm Robbie MacKinnon. I'm the Undergraduate Humanities faculty rep.
I'm Ethan, and I'm the Undergraduate Sciences faculty rep.
So, guys,
Yeah.
what is a faculty rep job? What do they do? What do they do here at Kent Union? How do they help us?
You want to
What
start?
don't we do?
What don't we do? It's a
Well,
very good
Well, you
point.
probably don't do any sports, but
I mean,
No.
fair. Realistically, I guess, within the union structure, we are top of the tiered system below the full-time officers,
Bragging.
essentially. So we have we have student-level representatives within each academic school, and in turn we have a school rep who is essentially the mouthpiece for every student on the programmes within that particular academic unit. And then we have us, and there's three of us, although Melissa, bless her, outgoing, has been our equivalent in the social sciences this year, but she's a graduate, so she's off. I guess we're effectively the mouthpiece just for a bigger group of students, because the further up the system you go, the more people you're speaking on behalf of, right? So essentially we attend meetings, we bring up issues, concerns, and it works the other way as well. You know, we pass on any initiatives that are going on the staff side that students need to know about. And a lot of the time just seek their feedback on any changes that are happening, would you say?
by there you mean students, of course, not staff.
Yes.
Yes, just clarify that.
Consultation's a big part of it, I think.
Yeah.
Like often as part of specific projects, but again, there are sort of more general issues.
I think we'll hit on that a little bit when we talk about your project you've been doing later.
Yes.
But do you have anything you want to add, Ethan? I'm sorry.
Our role's often more strategic
Mm.
than the other reps, in that we don't actually do any of the groundwork necessarily.
You're
to
lazy.
make the change.
Well, no.
Not in the same way that a student rep would.
A good manager delegates, Stuart.
That's true, that's why I give you
That's our
so
job.
much work to do. Get on with it.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't done it yet. I'm leaving soon. Get on with it. So effectively, the faculty reps are kind of like smaller versions of me, but there's three of them. They kind of help me with my strategic level jobs and then bring me problems to fix, which is wonderful. So two-way street and all that. Why is being a faculty rep important?
Good.
What makes them important?
I think a big part of what we do is about the relationship between the union and the student body, because without links on a student level, which is effectively what we are, it would be entirely down to staff to reach out to students who there's an obvious disconnect between them. You know, there's age, there's role, there's the nature of what they do within the university. You know, we're scholars, and they are as well a lot of the time, but you know, on a professional basis. And so I think it's necessary because we get an understanding of what goes on behind the scenes, and in turn so too do the people we represent, I guess. And not only that, but we actually get the chance to influence policy to some extent, depending on how high up certain issues or decisions go. And that means that it can be informed by exactly what students want, because that's what we seek out, and that's a big part of what we do. So in that sense, understanding what goes on, I think, and the capacity to change things that students want changed.
So the reason I wanted to bring these two in today is because they've both done projects this year, and they'll obviously be they will also be here next year because they both won their re-election. Both very highly contested races.
Ron was threatening.
Wrong.
Where they won by, I assume hundreds of votes. I hope both of you.
Yeah.
Ethan's not sure.
How many hundreds we're not going to talk about? But
Well, when there's so many candidates, it's pretty easy.
Mine was closer than it should have been.
Ethan's as close as it should have been. Well, okay, it's good to know. So I'd like to talk about what you've been up to this year, what you've done, what you're proud of, what you think's important. Just so, one, we can get it out to the students a little bit via a different method, instead of just giving them another article to read they probably won't read, another Facebook post they probably won't read, and sort of how it's gone and what we've learned. Has anything changed? One of you has to start. You get to choose amongst the two
it's your
of you.
turn this time.
I'll kick off with that because yours is much more complex. So this year, my main focus has been on formerly January exams, now called winter assessment.
It's a better name.
Yes, it really is.
Do you want to clarify on what January exams and winter assessment
Yes,
are?
so basically, most of the institutions in the country, in our peer group or just wider, have two assessment windows every year. The summer one that we have, and then one after the Christmas break, where autumn modules are assessed. And
As in, they're assessed as in regards to exams,
or
sometimes coursework.
Yes. I think, are we the only? Or
We're like one of
three?
four.
One of very
Three
few,
or
yeah.
four.
And there's another institution that switched back to what we do now, and all their grades dropped.
Yes.
So that's pretty cool. In all the ways they're terrible.
Yeah, so we're one of four that doesn't do it at the moment, and quite a few student reps and students are interested in changing.
I think all the sciences reps were interested at the beginning of this year, weren't they?
Yes,
You had a little group.
All of my school reps highlighted it as one of their priorities for this year, as well as myself. So I started term 1 by surveying just January exams, because that was all there was back then, as far as I was aware.
It's early days.
It was like the initial
It might
remit,
have been
wasn't it?
winter
Yeah.
assessments, but
Yeah.
it was January exams back then.
But we found that January exams, people assume it means we're going to give you more exams, which is
Yes.
not what it means.
Yeah,
It's distribution, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's
Yeah.
about how you weight them.
yeah, it's about spreading them out better, which quite a few students didn't pick up on, and rightly found concerning that we were going to throw
Yes, that
on
would be concerning.
even more exams
Yeah.
on top of the myriad.
I mean, how many do you have this year?
I haven't finished yet. I will have 7 this year.
That's quite a lot already.
Yes.
Do you think I don't want to add any more to 7?
Another 4 or 5.
That seems like...
People were rightly quaking in their boots.
But this was a
thoughts.
misinterpretation.
It
That's the
was,
But
yeah.
yes, none of this is
Yes.
happening. So
The question was very much January exams, would you like it, yes or no, or maybe? And if maybe, why? And it was surprisingly over, or just under, I think, half in favour of January exams, just from that, and then 50-50, the rest of it between no and maybe.
okay. So I'd say that leans towards yes.
Yeah.
Like the Kent Union did a survey in 2016, which required balls in boxes. That was our method of doing surveys at the time, where we asked students, would you like winter exams, with no information about what winter exam was, and that was 55-45 to doing winter exams.
It's interesting that even with so little context, it's so broadly approved of.
Yeah, because obviously when you explain it to people, they're obviously a lot more receptive, because probably a lot of the 45 went, I don't want to do more exams, stop it. Because the first time I ran for SAB, it was on my manifesto, and everyone was like, Stuart, what do you want more exams? Like, no, I don't want more exams. I want 2 exam periods, guys. Stop bullying me. So what did you do? So you did a little survey.
Yeah, online survey.
It wasn't just about that though, was it? It was about more stuff.
No, the first half was about varied assessment and whether students were happy with how they were being assessed, the amount of assessment, and whether there was any slightly more creative types of assessment, perhaps from other schools that they knew of, that they would consider or like to have implemented in their schools. That was less clear cut than the January assessments. So the qualitative, is that written?
Yeah.
Quantitative is data.
I don't know words.
Yeah, qualitative is
Yeah, the English student
written.
knows. Ask the English
The
student.
qualitative responses to that were much more useful, I'd say, than just the numbers, because it seems from the numbers you could infer that everyone was perfectly happy with how they were being assessed and the frequency of it. But when you got down into the actual written responses, there was a lot more useful information there that could be built upon.
I mean, it's just not true that everyone's happy with how they're assessed
No.
either. I mean, no one's happy with everything all the time anyway.
Well, it speaks to the importance of proper feedback, I think,
Yeah.
and not just things that could be like quantified numerically.
Yeah.
Here's some data. I
Yeah.
think you want this. Yeah.
Exactly.
So asking the question.
The data's not very emotive, is it? It doesn't capture how people
Well, it depends who
feel
you're talking
very
to.
well.
Some people love data, man.
Yeah.
Have you met Barris? He loves it.
Shout out, Tom.
So Ethan, now that you've done the initial research, what's the next steps, do you think? And what's sort of going on in the institution at the moment? Like, conversations about it, what's happening?
So the Deputy Vice-Chancellor, April McMahon, is very on board with this idea, and it's something that she's personally supporting quite a lot at senior committees like Education Board, which is the top or second top.
It
Senate.
sits below
It's shy
Senate.
of Senate, yeah.
Just below
Senate
Senate.
decides everything.
Second top,
But everything reports to Senate. So
second top education-based
yeah, it's
Board
education
in the
focused.
university. and it's come up there once before, just in discussion, I believe. We haven't had a paper on it just yet.
There was a paper on it at the last education board. There's not one this one, but there's another one after. So in September there's meant to be another one.
Board, there'll be another paper.
So Vicky has to handle that one.
Yeah,
Sorry,
hopefully
Vicky.
I'll feed into.
Oh, I'm sure you will.
I'm not sure, given how much the scope of it has changed, whether my data will be particularly useful anymore.
I have to get more data.
Yes.
Do it again.
Yes, it does sound like back to surveys.
Yeah.
Maybe something slightly
more creative.
engaging for students.
Yeah. Because we also hear that from students a lot that they don't like surveys because they have to answer like 1,000, which makes a lot of sense.
I think we need some more like imaginative means of data collection.
Balls in boxes. It's the future.
Yeah, in the same way that assessments need to vary.
Absolutely.
We need to vary
Oh yeah.
how we get that data.
Okay. So how are you feeling about the whole thing at the moment?
Quite confident. The students seem behind it. The staff less so. But
I think the staff are
I think
mixed.
yeah.
I think a lot of the staff's concern comes down to like life quality,
Yeah.
and also change is scary. They don't like
I was going to say that there is like quite just a widespread resistance to change in general, isn't there? But there, to some extent, because all this restructuring is happening anyway, a lot of things are going to be different.
Yeah.
So why not also implement?
Yeah, I mean, the university's
other
not
stuff.
going to. It's not going to look the same.
No.
When I leave here, so much will have changed from when I started.
Give it a year or two as well,
And
even
then-
like
Yeah.
once you've gone,
Oh.
a little bit,
I mean, I'm 6 years. I'm just going to go into a little bit of what's changed since I started 6 years ago in 2013 because I'm old, super old. I've seen so many students start and then graduate. It's very depressing. But when I started, we're going to get onto Robbie's contact hour paper in a minute, but it's not that many contact hours. No one was even talking about winter exams. We're talking about potentially changing how inductions are run to make them more of a 2-week induction focus. Assessments look like they're going to change. There's probably lots of other epic stuff going on. Woody's was just knocked down and rebuilt. That was cool.
Yeah.
We changed this sabbatical officer structure. There's now a postgrad sab. So I know that's 6 years, and lots of students won't see 6 years, but that is a lot of stuff going on. And I've definitely not mentioned all of it because I'm thinking about it off the top of my head.
Lecture capture.
Lecture capture happened.
Yeah,
that
Big
wasn't.
one.
Yeah,
Right.
that. No, yes, yeah. So when I finished uni, the lecture capture was implemented, which was great. I was very happy about that. I spent the last 2 years defending it in meetings.
We must also have introduced like a ton of new programs in that time.
Oh yeah,
that's
cancelled a bunch
that's
as
two
well.
whole
Mm.
course cohorts, isn't it? 6 years, So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean SMFA closed down.
Mm.
That was sad.
It's a centre now, though, isn't it?
It's Centre for Music and Audio Technologies.
Yeah.
So CMAT. This doesn't do fine
What was
arts
that mean?
anymore. Just does music. So loads happened. Why was I talking about that?
We were thinking about change.
Oh
Yeah.
yes. So staff are resistant to change, but it does happen. It's just more of a slowly chipping away rather than a do this now. It sounds
Yeah.
cool.
Welcome to bureaucracy.
Mm. Oh, also we added like 3 new buildings. That was
yeah.
pretty fun.
And we're building a medical school now.
And we're building a medical
Yeah.
school. That was a surprise.
And a new economics building.
Yeah, have you seen that building? It looks awesome.
It
It's pretty
does.
pretty
the
damn
bricks
cool.
the bricks on the outside look
Well designed.
quality. Yeah. I mean, maybe Simpson's gonna have a run for its
Yes,
money.
It's not
It-
the
it
outside
really
that
is.
counts, though, is it, Stuart?
Pardon?
It's not the outside that counts.
I think the aesthetic of the outside of a building is
Well,
surprisingly
it's important to some extent, yeah.
I mean, when you look at, I'm calling out Rutherford Elliott here. If you look at Rutherford Elliott, they look old and tired.
Can I put something to bed? I'd really like to know definitively.
Okay.
You know that
On the
there's this
podcast? Okay.
there's this sort of urban myth about Rutherford and Elliott. That,
Oh, it's not a
Yes.
prison. Do you know what's
but that they were designed by an architect
No.
who has also designed prisons. Is that not true?
according to Information Services,
Okay.
I've been informed that Darwin is the prison because it has those long corridors you can see down from, like a prison would.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then it has all the cells on
So
the side.
this is just
'Cause
something.
if you look at prisons, they're typically not mazes.
True. So this
Um,
is just something that someone chose to say at some point.
Or
and then
someone got confused between Darwin, Rutherford, and it just spread.
Okay.
I mean, it's very possible.
I mean, do cut that out if you want to.
No, that's
Just-
fine. I can put to bed
Just
the
curious.
everything's a prison
Yeah,
myth.
here first, folks.
Today's hot take.
I know, hot take. Stuart knows all the things. / has spoken to staff members about it. It's the kind of thing I want to talk about. When I'm talking about important law policies and I want to slip in, is Rutherford built by a prison
Oh, it's
architect?
important. You got to give the people what they want.
Yeah.
I know. Prisons. They love prisons.
I mean, I meant the knowledge that it's not one.
Oh,
but
sorry.
Okay.
I got confused. I thought students just love being in prisons. That's my bad. So winter exams have been Ethan's main focus over this year. We'll get onto stuff that he's planning to do next year, but later. But I imagine it might be largely similar. Robbie, your turn.
Hi.
Hit me up.
Well, at the very beginning of this year, I essentially inherited a project which had been begun by my predecessor, Fred Birkbeck, last year's Humanities Faculty Representative, and that was on student satisfaction, or lack thereof, I guess, as we'll get to, with the contact hours, or maybe more appropriately, as has since come up in discussions, contact time. Because hours suggests that it's a unit that's reducible to just that length of time, when in reality often it extends beyond, depending on how you classify it. But in effect, in humanities in particular, this has become a very important thing in recent years, and it's about exactly how much class time students receive on a weekly basis, effectively. Whether this is being put to its best use in terms of how it's delivered and the formats students receive, so whether it's just lectures and seminars or whether there's more besides, and also if there are even enough on a numerical level, whether students feel they're getting value for their tuition fees, for example, and if uni serves...
almost universally, I don't think any student ever said to me,
well, no,
I felt like my tuition was a great value.
But it's a complicated
yes,
issue,
obviously, it's not as simple as divide your lectures by your hours, you're done.
No. Which is a mistake some people have made. But
it's true.
So to some extent, it's about value for money, but also about value for time, because students are giving their time too. It's not just about what's given to us by staff members and how well we make use of the resources made available to us, but it's also whether that provision is good enough, effectively, and not just about the extent to which students engage. So project was kind of in its infancy when I came into the faculty rep role at the start of this year, but Fred had held a series of focus groups, hadn't he? And he'd
at least one. I don't remember there being any more than that.
But he was definitely putting feelers out in the faculty about how people felt broadly.
He came around to Fred quite late,
which is why I guess it necessarily was carried forward.
Yeah, I can't remember what he was doing in the first term. I'm sure it was something important. It was reading weeks. He was doing reading week work. And then he sort of said it in a meeting with the dean in it, and
then it became mine to
the dean went, what?
mine to incubate, So yeah, that has dominated my year, really. I mean, I've taken part in other things like working groups, and I've been involved peripherally with Ethan's work, and Melissa's on reward and recognition for the reps. But contact hours was the big thing, and in a predictably similar fashion, it involved a lot of data collection.
How did you do the data collection?
A few different ways.
Ethan did an online survey, didn't you?
Yeah. That was my I guess dominant mode as well. But I also did some what was effectively canvassing. Except obviously I'm not a political candidate per se. I'm just trying to find out people's opinions on stuff. So it involved visiting some sort of academic societies, both those that are active and those that relate directly to humanities. Although eventually this is something that will theoretically map onto other academic units in the uni. There are
some complaints from some social science schools about similar issues.
Yeah. So, but for now it's kind of self-contained because my remit only extends as far as the humanities faculty. So I ran a SurveyMonkey survey, which is where the majority of my respondents came from. But I also visited things like UKC feminism, UKC arts, philosophy. Was that it? History and military history being the biggest and most active academic society on campus.
They had a joint event where they had some soldiers down,
yes,
didn't they? Cool.
They had some demos and some props.
There was a room
full
full of World War II stuff.
So it felt a bit invasive, going in and asking them what they thought about contact when they had these demos happening.
But it was had opinions, didn't they?
It was necessary nonetheless. So we had the online survey, we had some academic society visits, and also some paper surveys. So I made a sort of short form version of the online questionnaire, had it printed for me by you, and then spent a day or two towards the end. Was it the very end of autumn term?
I don't remember.
But
how cold was it? Do you remember?
It was quite cold. what I did alongside it was Camille mainly. So my School
Camille,
of Arts rep.
Shout
out to
Camille. General legend.
We effectively targeted buildings that we knew humanities students congregate in part because it's where they choose to study, and in part because it may relate directly to an academic school. So Jarman on the plaza, for example, we knew art students would be in. Rutherford Extension is true for English, but also things like the library, parts of Cornwallis, where we knew that classes happened for people in the humanities faculty, so we would be able to speak to them that way.
We weren't talking to all the humanities students, though, were we?
Not all of them, no. The people we excluded were those who, to the best of our knowledge, have sufficient contact hours already, either because they're externally accredited, which is the case with architecture, or just because, in the case of drama, which is the other sort of program or school that we excluded, it's a performance-based course, effectively. So that means they have a lot of contact already, because a lot of it is physical, it's theatre, it's delivered in that way, so they get a lot of it.
Robbie did a little gesture there with theatre.
Which you'll never see, I'm sorry. But no, so they were excluded, so we were targeting non-drama and non-architecture students where we knew we would find them physically on campus.
I remember finding a bunch of drama students when we went to do it. There was like a big group of them in the library.
It's frustrating because, it's easy to speak to big groups of people, but when they don't come within the scope of your work, it's not so useful.
It's waste time.
But no, so that took a surprisingly long amount of time, but I learned a lot about the process, I think, in running the survey round, asking my reps to distribute it, speaking to people, just approaching them and asking them if they had a minute to fill out the questionnaire, because it would affect them ultimately, and because it's something that's not just important to me, otherwise I wouldn't be doing it. It's something that's going to affect everyone for whom the changes, or whatever changes do take place.
So what did you do with the information once you got it? So this is different to Ethan's, because Ethan's kind of not jumping on, but joining a project that the university have been interested in but need some assistance with. Whereas this is a project that students want. Well, that's what I believe the information told us.
It did.
Students want, but it's not something the faculty were thinking about otherwise.
No, but again, speaking of why our role is important, it's to draw attention to exactly this sort of thing. It's not just stuff that's already in the pipeline, but that which staff might not otherwise occur to academics and to senior staff, which is why I think this is necessary and timely. I spent a lot of time collating the feedback I received, and as with Ethan's project, the qualitative was just not more important than the numbers to some extent, because whilst my primary sort of question was about satisfaction, I personally think that's quite a hard thing to quantify. So what was a lot more interesting for me was delving into things like, if you're dissatisfied, why? Or, do you feel a sense of community with your course cohort, for example? Stuff that is more to do with feeling, and therefore harder to gauge with numbers. So initially I put together a fairly informal presentation, which just involved dumping my graphs from SurveyMonkey into a PowerPoint, which I delivered to the Humanities Education Committee at the end of the autumn term.
What do they do?
What did they do? Or what do they do?
What do they do? What's their job?
Well, they preside over faculty-level educational matters, I guess. And they have reps from most schools, whether heads or DVs.
I think it's all DVs.
Is it all
What's a
DVs?
DV?
A director of education.
What do they do?
They direct education.
They decide curriculums and
they devise programs,
assessment types and styles.
So theirs are the opinions that matter on projects of this kind, I think. So I delivered it to them to broad approval, although at this point I hadn't yet really put together any recommendations. I was just showing them the data and the early sort of conclusions that I'd drawn from it. What was difficult, as Ethan said, is that you're only ever going to get so much uptake when you're working at the level that we do. So depending on the nature of the issue you're working on, any report you produce is often only going to be indicative. You're never going to capture the entirety of the group of people that your work concerns, but hopefully you'll get enough of a spread that it's a sufficient snapshot. So they were happy enough with that at the start of spring term it was to be turned into a report, which could then go up the various meeting structures beyond HEC, which is sort of low level in the grand scheme of things, I guess.
Yeah, it reports to Education Board.
Yeah, which in turn goes right the way up, but so it is several levels down. Yeah,
so. it's not as important as Education Board.
So I spent a solid day, and non-stop.
Oh wow, did you?
I did. I was sat in the library, just sort of cloistered myself.
Oh my god.
D2.
It's pretty keen.
I spent a solid day turning it into a report, which is something I'd never done before. So again, it was.
What's a report?
It was a learning experience. What's a report? It's a more formal way of representing data or information you collect about a particular subject or concern to be delivered to meetings at a higher level in the structure that we've been discussing.
The hope is that at some point we'll have this report on the website so you can look at it, because I have suggested to the union that we have a sort of big, just a web page of everything that's ever been passed by a Kent Union volunteer or officer, just as like a data bank of it in case people want to look at it.
Well, it remains to be seen, I think, which I'll come to, exactly how the recommendations we have made will be implemented. But yeah, that's a worthwhile thing to aspire to, I think, to have people know that the work's been done and that change.
Have Robbie and MacKinnon on the website forever.
Change has and will come
Imagine
as a result
the fame.
of it.
Ethan Basso got winter exams.
Yeah.
Assessment.
So I spent a very long, stressful day writing a report early spring. Realistically, I mean late winter, because the terms names differ to the seasons.
I remember the day you were writing that.
Do you?
It was when we had our meeting with April.
Yeah.
And you were in a blind panic about writing the report before it, meeting, and then straight out back to the library to finish it off.
I mean, I think I did all right, but it was a stressful time. However, what was interesting about that, I think, was that the formal aspects of this role, that was the first time I'd really come up against them in terms of like documentation, I guess, because obviously we'd been to meetings throughout the year and they're very official and they're very professional, but I personally had never delivered something like that, never had to write something like that. So I learned a lot about like composing that sort of thing.
I don't know why they're as official as they are.
Nor do I.
They
to
all
be
seem
honest.
quite humorless, but I don't understand why that is.
But I mean, are they something you expect to be funny though?
But
I mean,
why
we're discussing
can't-
fairly
I
serious
find Education
matters.
Board quite funny.
EB is funny sometimes.
It can be, but some of them are dry.
To be fair, the
Depends on the
last
chair, I
EB, and these meetings, I think, are an important part of what we do. But I agree that maybe they could be conducted in a more light-hearted way.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I
Not like
I don't know exactly what that would look like.
Not like a jokey, not serious way, but you can be serious and also not be completely humorless.
You've got to dab every time you pass a policy.
Yeah, that's how I do it. I mean, it's the best way to pass policy. You just get up, you dance on the table. It's the way of
I wish this was being filmed as well.
They don't come across as very approachable.
Yeah,
April McMahon
To student
dabbing.
reps.
because one of the problems.
First Education Board we went to was...
Yeah. One of the problems with... Sorry, Robbie, I'm going to go on a tangent quickly.
That's okay.
With Library User Panel and IT User Panel is that they are... Library User Panel especially is a very large meeting, about 26 people in it, and I think 4 of them are meant to be student reps. So if you're a student rep who they're new, they don't really know what they're doing, and I can't go for some reason. I mean, it's not a meeting that I need to go to really, because I don't use the library. I mean, I'm not a user, unlike everybody else. I use it sometimes, but not nearly as much as anyone else will. It's very intimidating to be addressed with 22 quite serious-looking staff because they're in a university meeting, and I think that's really problematic.
It's a difficult
thing. It encourages students to not say anything.
I think what's hard, like, I don't know if you agree, but regardless of the level we're working at, because obviously we've each been at lower tier rep roles as well, what's hard is training equips you for the kind of work you're going to be doing. But things like meetings and things like knowing how to address senior staff is to some extent only really learnable through doing it.
Yeah.
It's the kind of knowledge you gain through experience and experience alone.
I would say... Sorry, did I interrupt you, Ethan?
I was going to say, events like the Lead Rep Barbecue that Kent Union does, formerly known as Dean Fest.
In my heart, it will always be Dean Fest.
R.I.P. Dean Fest. Yeah.
Dean Fest 2018, never forget.
Back when barbecues were actually outside.
British weather. It breaks some of the ice between you and the staff.
It does.
Definitely. Before you go into these.
Yeah.
That's a big thing,
meetings.
I think.
I deliberately set that meeting up to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that it's working. I agree with you that the meetings thing, you can't... I've been to these training sessions for years now, and you can't train to go to a meeting. You have to just... Part of you has to just go for it, go in and see what happens and sort of react to it on the ground.
It's hard because I think we all really value sessions on things like diversity, inclusivity, equality, all of that.
Training's all
it's not to discredit that. It's just to say that there are certain parts of what we do that you only pick up through doing them.
Yeah.
Because meetings you have to learn how everybody works and what their tics are and what they like, what they don't like.
One of the worst things is the acronyms.
So many
as well.
So many.
My personal favourite being ASQUAC.
D of E, HEC. ASQUAC is a great name. I forget what it means, but I sit on it.
It's the Academic Standards and Quality Committee.
Yeah, something like that.
Committee.
I think.
It's a committee.
One or the other.
I mean, I know what it does, obviously, because I sit on it.
Yeah.
But
I should hope you do then.
But every so often, someone will name drop like PTES and PRES, and like I know what they are now because I did a PPR. But
bragging. What's a PPR? You've just done another one.
Sorry. Oh damn! Hypocrisy. A PPR is a periodic program review.
Have we called Education Board EB yet?
Yeah.
Yes.
But we have also said it in full, so it's fine.
See, look, we're corrupted now. It's too late for us.
You basically vet academic schools. But anyway, that's besides
the acronyms are mental. It's good fun though, learning all the acronyms. I think when I started, I had this massive page of acronyms.
Honestly, for next year's reps, well, tell them to make like a crib sheet.
Yeah, of acronyms.
Just with like this equals this, this equals that. That's all we need.
Vicky's already started
one.
We
got one at student rep level. We got like a sheet of jargon buster.
Why don't we
I think the problem is the higher up you go, the more acronyms you have to deal with.
Yeah.
So we'll just
and therefore all the more reason for a cheat sheet. You know?
I eventually gave up. There were too many acronyms for me to write down and know the names of.
That just makes it seem like revision though. If we get
it does. To be fair. I don't want my voluntary work to seem too much like my course. So,
when someone says it in a meeting, you have to like stop. I have to check the crib sheet to see what that means.
Page 7 for this one.
Page 7 of the acronym.
Class, please consult.
Oh my god. And that's why it's also important in the meetings to say, I don't know what that means, can you please clarify? Which I don't think people do enough, because it's intimidating, especially if you're in a room 22 people and you're like one of 2 student reps.
I've felt more able to do that recently, because the more new issues come up, the more new acronyms there are.
Yeah.
You know, so there's almost always at least one occasion every meeting, I don't know about you, where I'll either say or make it clear visually that I don't know what something means, and someone will stop and say, okay, this is this.
With a hand gesture like that.
Yeah.
Robbie just waved his arms around, basically.
Doing a lot of flailing today.
Yeah. I mean, before we know it, humanities contact hours will be shortened to HCH.
God. Or HCT, contact time.
Been already.
Yes, it's surprising. It's lasted this long.
I'm resisting
got the old WA over there. And so,
but yeah.
Okay, so
where did we get?
We've got to about the paper being written, and you being in the library for a very long time.
Yes.
I think, and then you sort of started to describe HEC.
Sorry.
Then we got sidetracked by a million other things
happening. So I
pretty cool.
Delivered my work on the project to HEC twice over. Once in my sort of informal PowerPoint capacity, and a lot more recently in its sort of final report form. At this point, however, we hadn't written the recommendations that we since have, which were a recent amendment to my paper, as a result of it needing to be more about actionable points and not just, please can you discuss this, you know, because whilst that's important too, it's very easy to just say you're going to do that, I think, and then sort of allow it to, or
even just do it and go, we've discussed it, tick, and then never do anything with it.
Absolutely. So people were not happy, because, you know, you're never pleased to hear that your students aren't satisfied with something, which as I haven't actually said yet, was broad brush the outcome.
So what did you find before we
I found that I think 55% were either dissatisfied or very dissatisfied, according to the metric that I chose to use, with the number they receive a week. And then I asked people, regardless of their satisfaction, as in what they had selected for that question, to explain why, if they felt that they could. Some concerns were monetary, even though, as we've spoken about, it's not as simple as dividing the number of hours you receive by the amount of tuition you pay.
But it's still completely valid for someone to feel like they're not getting value for money.
Of course, yeah. Some of it was about the notion of routine, and the fact that people need focal points in their day about which to go about the rest of their business. Yeah. Some of it was dissatisfaction with the way their contact hours were delivered, even if not the number they get, which is why another part of my survey was about, so not unlike the varied assessment portion of your work, was thinking about other ways in which students' classes could be taught. So on programs where these don't already take place, things like workshops, things like field trips, and forums or discussion groups, or just other forms of tuition.
Because it's weird that you do all those things. Well, not all those things. You do some of those things at school.
You do.
And you come to uni, it's like, no, none of my...
I don't think anyone expects a reduction in the kinds of teaching
No, I mean,
get when you come to university, and yet a lot of the time it is the case.
It switches just to selection seminars and off you go.
So my main points were effectively, what course do you do? How many hours do you get? Is this enough or is this not? And then I asked them why. Then we thought a bit about varied assessment, and then finally about community. So how close students felt to their sort of peer groups or year groups, in this case. Broadly, yeah, people were dissatisfied, unhappy with the limited amount of forms of teaching they receive, and not feeling sufficiently close to their cohort, in brief. To come bang up to date, I'm about to present, having written some amended recommendations with your help, Stuart, about to present the report, or a sort of abbreviated summary of it, and the discussions that we had at the most recent
that's
HEC.
Tuesday, isn't it?
Yeah, at the next education board on Tuesday. So results pending, but...
So what were those recommendations?
One was about the university as a whole, wasn't it? To be transparent as to exactly where students' tuition fees go. Because a lot of people made the mistake that Stuart described earlier of just assuming that all their money, all their 9,250, 9.25, there we go, 9.25k was going on the class that they receive, and not things like resources, other course costs, things like technology,
the library, the buildings.
And so a lot of people fail to understand that, and I think that is part of the reason they are so dissatisfied with the amount they pay relative to what they get, because they don't recognise where else the money goes.
I think the problem is they compare it with sciences, who are obviously also paying for resources and buildings,
and they get significantly more time. That was one of them. Another was about considering implementing some of the alternative forms we talked about. And of course there are some cases, as there will always be, of variation, where certain programs do already have classes that resemble these other kinds. It's not entirely lectures and seminars across all of humanities, but we suggested that directors of education review their course provisions, essentially, and think about where there's room to implement other kinds of contact.
3 more to go.
Yes. Let's see if I can remember them all. And another was about dissertations or long essay modules being a special case, in that you hear horror stories of people getting nothing a week, maybe a fortnightly hour-long supervisor meeting,
and no supervisor meetings.
And realistically, we thought that because these are credit-bearing in the same way that modules are, they ought to also warrant a base minimum of contact time on a weekly basis. But that this wasn't the main focus of my project, so we have suggested a working group be set up to review the practice of contact with special regard to dissertations.
Yeah, because one of the big problems is when a dissertation module that has like a workshop every week for 12 weeks, and then you go off and you write a dissertation and there's just someone else with just nothing.
It's very easy to lack that contact, and if you're doing it as part of a taught program, which everyone does when it's an undergraduate dis, you expect time, I think. At a very base level, you want people to work with on it. It's not just go away and write this. There needs to be that ongoing support, which is why that was kind of borne out as one of our points. 2 more, yeah? 2 more.
One was about academic societies.
It was.
About how they're important.
Yeah, we're trying to sort of continue to encourage staff to work closely with the academic societies that relate to their school or the program they teach on. Because things like history and military history being a perfect example, they run trips of their own, and they would benefit, I think, from sharing in the resources that the school itself has, because a lot of what they do is done off their own back, with their membership fees and not a lot more. So close work between societies and schools, and also societies in the union, I think we suggested was important. And then there was one more.
The last one was actually the contact hours, wasn't it?
Yes.
The actual contact hours point.
The actual contact hours point. Well, it's good that we saved it then, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, we've had various fairly abstract promises in the past of implemented minimums, which are yet to have come into force.
I don't think promises is the right word. Suggestions.
Well, yeah, okay, but tentative agreement, I think, that hasn't translated into practice. Yeah. So we have said that 30 credit modules on a weekly basis should, and often do already, to be honest. So we suggested they stay the same for the most part, but that 30 credit modules have a minimum of 4 weekly contact hours. And that relative to this, a 15 credit, which in theory is half, but this isn't currently reflected, we don't think, in the number of hours 15 credit modules get. It should have a base minimum of 2. Because then all the maths works out. And, straight away, if you're offering a 15 credit module that only has 1 hour a week, for example, then you're immediately adding another hour.
I don't think that happens, but
No.
if it does, this will catch it.
Or if there's a 30 with only 3, which has been the case for me this year, actually. So that's probably a better example. So it's about establishing a baseline, I think, because whilst another big question that's come out of this is how we define contact, at base we do still need a means of ensuring that people don't go below a certain amount. That's where we are.
Cool. Well, exciting times. We'll see how Tuesday goes.
Busy.
Will this go live before Education Board?
Probably not.
So by the time you're here listening to this,
something will have happened.
Maybe something will have happened. How exciting!
But I mean,
unless I get really quick on my editing, but that's
faculty staff. They seem to approve. We recognise that in implementing some of the recommendations that we've made, there will be problems. Yeah,
it was kind of a begrudging acceptance.
It was,
I think,
because people acknowledge that the work I've done and what they've heard from elsewhere points to a need for change. But it's not always the easiest change to actually make, I think.
Yes, because obviously it require rework of programs and the timetabling department has to be involved.
The timetabling thing is going to be very important. And you've got to think about man hours from the other direction as well, because...
Not man hours, staff hours.
Staff hours,
Sorry.
No. You're right, because the more contact they offer, the more work they have to do outside of those scheduled units as well.
But at the same time, you could argue they should already be doing that.
Oh, this is true. So it's a lot to expect, but at the same time, it's something that you would think would already be enforced, I think.
So really, we're just taking a collaborative approach, trying to find what works for both sides. Compromise, basically.
It's happening at an opportune time, I think, and considering we have a restructure forthcoming,
exactly.
It is worth trying to change this sort of thing now, because then it can be embedded in the new makeup of the university,
new system,
I guess.
Of the university.
So that's essentially been my whole year.
All right, so the last thing we're going to talk about today is what's the plans for next year? Who would like to start? Now, obviously, it's early days. We're recording this in end of May 2019, so they've not officially started their next year yet. They have all the whole summer to think about it.
Barely finished this one.
He's not. I mean, Ethan's still got exams to go.
This is true.
Robbie has finished this year. But you might have some ideas for what you want to do already. And what can the listeners look forward to coming from the faculty reps next year?
Some spicy policies.
Plus, obviously, a social sciences faculty rep who comes back from the year abroad.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're yet to meet her. But she ran from afar, which in itself is quite impressive.
Reminds her of me.
Someone else as well. So
yeah, there's two candidates.
Yeah.
The credentials for it. Excited to meet her.
Or the base, at least the support. Do you want to go?
Yeah, as well. Yeah. So I think, as with Robbie, it'll be more of the same again next year with regards to winter assessment. Get that hopefully finished off by then, implemented.
The implementation will be might be a while because of how the university advertises courses. It advertises term times in it, and the restructure might delay it in implementation even if the papers are passed. And also you can't really rush something. I'm of the opinion you need to be careful with something like that because it's a big deal. It's really important. Don't mess it up. If you need to take another year to sort it out, sort it out. Also, probably need to mention you can't actually change how students assess that's already started their program. So there'll be a few years of dual running of how things work.
Cycle has to go through effectively.
Because they've been promised their term structure already, and that can't be changed.
It's effectively a contract, right?
Yeah, it is a contract. It's
the minute you attend, you agree to what they've said they'll provide. And so does the uni.
There's two ways, because obviously if they're not providing what you need them to provide, you can call them up for it. And I think that has happened. Must have. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, we've had examples.
Yeah. You've heard stories, rumours.
Rumours, yeah. Beyond that, I ran on a manifesto. Let's see if I can remember.
Dank memes.
Plenty of those.
Squats.
Plenty more of those to come.
Squats in the plaza.
Absolutely. Especially because I'm biosciences. My main experience in the faculty is biosciences. But from what I hear from School of Physical Sciences as well as computing, they don't have many skill building lab sessions or anything like that, which is something I'm interested in trying to get the schools to implement. I don't know how easy it'll be because of the cost associated with running lab sessions, but
and how busy I think the labs are often.
Yes,
But
yeah,
that doesn't mean you shouldn't try.
yeah, exactly.
So
Because all of the lab sessions I do are to generate a piece of coursework. There's none just to build
on for banter.
relevant, employable skills.
Banter lab
that-
sessions.
Yeah. Well, I won't go that far. But yeah, there's very little.
There's also some work you've started around varied assessment, because you mentioned in your
Oh yeah, of course.
you're doing varied assessment. It's on Vicky's manifesto as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
And what's it on yours, Robbie?
I mean, it's part of the contact hours work.
Part
I
of
don't think I
contact
ran on it.
Sure. I don't think I ran on it. I can't remember what I ran on. I'm Robbie MacKinnon.
that's
I
good
wing
enough.
everything.
Yeah,
it's fine.
whatevs.
Yeah, we're on a focus group for varied assessment.
We are.
Yeah.
Aren't we? Which Vicky will be taking over.
Yes, you will, because I do not have time to finish it, unfortunately, as
Oh.
much as I would love to.
What's nice about that is it means we know it'll be carried forward,
Yeah.
because not only is it something you want to work on,
Yeah.
but Stuart's replacement is,
Mhm.
is that's a policy point. So it means things will happen.
Most SABs carry on old SABs work, because it's normally easy wins when you've set up the
Yeah.
base.
Can't imagine anyone's come in,
Mm.
looked at their predecessors' work and gone,
Garbage.
This
Throw
is
it away.
rubbish.
get rid of it.
Actually, there was a bit about anonymous marking at the beginning of me starting, which I think Dave implemented or sort of pushed for. But the feedback that came back was that it wasn't actually helpful for students, and it just stopped them getting constructive feedback over periods of time, and didn't make them feel any better about the marking. So I said, no, stop doing that. That's not good. But I guess that's based on evidence rather than me just going, lol, whatever,
Yeah.
get rid of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure sneering
Not
at them
just-
is enough,
Not
really.
Yeah.
just on a whim.
Yeah. Robbie,
Well,
will the content hours ever end, or will you be doing them forever?
I mean, by its very nature, it's a project that doesn't have a very, very, very final or obvious endpoint.
Mm.
However, we're hoping that pending what Education Board think about it on Tuesday, it's something that will translate into real change based on the recommendations that we listed. Depending on how that goes, will inform how much further forward I have to take it, and will give me cause to think about things like monitoring whether those implementations are actually happening.
It's true.
But another, as you've stressed to me, another very important part of what we've spoken about was the work on dissertations. Because this is something, again, not that I have an awful amount of knowledge of this particular aspect, because I'll
Yet.
only be writing mine in September. Something that's been a problem for a long time. So if people agree to the establishment of a working group to review dissertation and long essay practice.
I think that's already agreed. I think the things that were agreed at HEC have been agreed.
Okay.
But Education Board are just, if they have any real problems with any of them, they'll pull them up, but I doubt they will.
So the prospect then of a dissertation working group
Mm.
is a very positive one, I think. And so a big part of my work next year will be overseeing that, I guess, and encouraging people to think about their current practice and how it can be improved, which I think, regardless of the issue, is basically what we do, isn't it? We look at provision and we go, where is this lacking, or where can it be different, and by proxy, hopefully better.
Try harder.
So it'll be wrapping up as far as it's possible to do so, my contact hours stuff, and shifting towards work on this long essay problem.
Sure.
And there will be tertiary things, because there always are.
there always are,
I'll stay on my working groups and help Ethan where necessary, and hopefully work with Christina on
Yes.
some things.
I'm sure she'll
But
have lots of
we're
ideas.
yet to even meet her, because she's away
Yes.
living it
Yeah.
up in France.
Having a lovely time.
But yeah, so more of the same to some extent, but also a slight shift in focus.
This is one of the things about being in this sphere of the volunteering / SAB world, is that things just take ages to do, which isn't. It's a little bit of a problem, but there's not really much you can do about it. So,
well, maybe part of our work then should also be thinking about like the very structures we have to pass these policies
I
through.
mean, the restructure is trying to do that. Me and Aaron do sit on those groups.
I mean, so theoretically, not that it will matter to us, because these are the kind of things that take, as you say, a while to put together. Faculties aren't going to exist, are they?
Well,
so there's a chance.
Nothing's passed yet.
There's a chance that we will be among, if not the last faculty representatives. Is that not right?
I think the minimum position is at least 2 years.
Okay, so there may be one more group.
You decide to do another undergrad and failed your year.
And another undergrad and fail.
and all.
No, I mean, so let's go with among then. Not definitely the last.
Well, if it makes you feel better,
I was looking forward to claiming that.
my name's the last name on the wall for VP Education. So,
but no, so it's kind of a turbulent time at the moment, I guess. Not only have we got internal restructuring, but we have Brexit uncertainty. We're still the European university after all.
yes, we are.
So a lot is
We always will be.
a lot's going on that's shaking up the structures we work within.
I think just look at the government.
Yeah.
So exactly how that plays out is anyone's guess, I think. So we're going to be forced to respond to what happens to things like the union structure, but the union's relationship to the university's structures next year, and just try and be agile, I guess, and carry on our business.
See what happens. Cool. All right, I'll wrap that up there, guys, because we have spoken for too long and I have overrun. But thank you for your time today. Any last message you want to give to the people that maybe listen to this podcast? I actually have no idea. Silence. No, all good then.
Recollections.
Plug your 2020 campaign.
September.
Oh yeah, run to be a student rep.
It's very rewarding. Do it.
Academic societies as well.
Yeah.
Also, keep an eye out for your boys.
Yeah.
Big things are coming.
Yeah, keep an eye out for my legacy, Ethan and Robbie,
Yeah.
as they run around campus next year.
Dumb and Dumber.
Damn right.
They'll be with Vicky this time, though.
Tweedledum.
All right, thank you very much for your time, guys.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening, and hopefully we will see you again soon.